ways out. As Hurricane Bonnie hits North Carolina, it brings with it high winds, heavy rain, and flooding. This is Wrightsville Beach on the coast, which is just east of Wilmington. And Bonnie continues to move ever so slowly along the North Carolina coast. One of the biggest concerns at this hour is flooding rain. And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Weather Center, where we begin in the Forecast Center as we continue to monitor the progress of Hurricane Bonnie, not only producing flooding rains, but also seas rising with the storm surge and also tornadoes. There is a tornado warning in effect now for northern Onslow County in southeastern North Carolina. A possible tornado detected on radar and moving toward the northwest at about 50 miles per hour, likely to be in the vicinity of Richlands, North Carolina, here at the top of the hour. And you can see on radar the swirl of heavy rain continuing to move inland, circulating around the center of Bonnie, which is still offshore but soon approaching landfall, as you can see. The very large area impacted by the rain, and in particular the tornado warning is in effect for northern Onslow County, around about here. I want to let you know as well that there are flood warnings continuing in effect within the rain area. 5 counties in southeastern North Carolina continuing under flood warnings. They include Brunswick County as well as New Hanover County, Pender County, eastern portions of Columbus, and eastern Bladen County under flood warnings. Actually, they have been under flood warnings until 5 p.m. It will be interesting to find out whether they will be extended by the Wilmington office of the National Weather Service. But in light of the rain and the flooding in areas particularly of New Hanover County, a public proclamation of a curfew has been issued. Curfew in effect for New Hanover County and the city of Wilmington from 8 p.m. this evening until 6 a.m. Thursday morning. And the curfew proclamation indicates that it's unlawful to be out on public streets or property in New Hanover County or the city of Wilmington after 8 this evening unless you're in search of medical assistance or services necessary to sustain a family member. Well, we are going to be switching now to show you exactly what's happening along the coast as Jim Cantori of the Weather Channel is standing by at Morehead City, North Carolina. Let's find out from you, Jim, what's happening where you are.
Well, Dan, I've definitely had better days here. The rain continues to come on down, the wind as well. If we had a hurricane force wind gust in Morehead City, it happened about 3 minutes ago because the wind just howled with the approach of this squall. And no doubt it gusted to very, very close to hurricane force. So some of the strongest winds that we've dealt with so far in gusts have come on in. Other than that, we continue to be sustained easily over tropical storm force, and with gusts occasionally 50, 60 miles an hour, with that exception that I told you about that was near hurricane force. As you look behind me here, you can see Bogue Sound. The water continues to remain extremely choppy. Actually, the visibility is greatly reduced, so there's a heck of a squall out over the water right now, and that continues to produce some very, very heavy rainfall. Let me take our tower cam shot. This is a good one. You can see what's happening with this wind and rain as it just causes all these trees to just sway and move around, and that's basically what we've seen. We haven't seen any type of tree snappings around here, but I have had reports of power outages as well as tree damage here locally. So we're just not going to be able to show you the pictures because we don't have any right here. But we've lost power for the last 5 hours now, and we've also experienced some very, very heavy rain, and that has been the big problem. No doubt Hurricane Bonnie is still very much affecting Morehead City, and I can't imagine what it's like out there in the Barrier Island, which is about 2.5 miles away. No doubt that coastline, which has just been renourished, by the way, has taken a major beating today, a huge heartbreaker for the Carolina coast. We'll just have to wait and see when all this clears just how bad it's been. Dan, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. We'll be checking back with you and appreciate your word from there in the brunt of the storm. Incidentally, we are, as we join John Hope, hurricane expert from the Weather Center here in the Forecast Center. John, a new tornado warning has just been issued for northern Hyde County and Terrell County in North Carolina, that until 5:55 local time. At 5 before the hour, National Weather Service Doppler radar indicated a possible tornado south of the Alligator River in northeast mainland Hyde County, moving northwest at about 50 miles per hour. This tornado expected to be near Kilkenny and Gumneck by about a quarter past the hour, 5:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's not surprising to find tornadoes developing as a hurricane moves inland, is it?
No, it isn't, Dan. It's important for folks to realize that around the hurricane, they move in a different direction than we usually see. They're usually moving towards the northeast or the east. This was moving towards the northwest,
right,
as they usually do around the hurricane.
Well, we have some latest information, new coordinates and new pressure reading, don't we?
We do have some new coordinates, Dan. There are a couple things here we really need to get over to folks, I think. First of all, the new coordinates at 34.0 north and 78.0 west. But more importantly, it's not moving very fast, but there's been some change in the hurricane warnings. Hurricane warnings have been discontinued north of the North Carolina-Virginia border, and that's been replaced by hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings and so on. And we'll have a graphic of that in just a few minutes to explain just exactly what's happened there. Also, on the new advisory, they advised us that the storm has been gradually slowing down today, which it has, and they expect it maybe to slow down even a little more. Now, what that means is a longer period where this storm center, the hurricane center, is going to be ashore in North Carolina. So they are in eastern North Carolina. So they're going to take a battering for a long time to come.
And with that slower speed, then rainfall estimates will probably go up.
Right. This will cause very serious flooding and the continued battering up ahead of the hurricane from the onshore winds.
Well, speaking of the rain, let's take a look here at the infrared satellite picture, and we can see that there's still a lot of convection back offshore, isn't there?
There is, and there's quite a bit here to the south, entirely to the south, but some of this rain very, very heavy, and you're going to see this rainfall pattern on the infrared picture change as these tops kind of expand, and then they warm and expand again.
And speaking of the battering, here's the wind profile.
Right there, we have hurricane force winds on shore now. At sea, they extend out about 115 miles, and at about 230 miles, the tropical storm force winds, not that far inland, but they are inland now, tropical storm winds and hurricane winds.
And here's an indication of what some of the wind gusts during the past hour have been. These wind gusts across portions of North and South Carolina, some of the higher winds, of course, in the Wilmington area, closer to the eye, a 67-mile-per-hour gust indicated there during the past hour.
And I saw a data buoy off Frying Pan Shoals off Cape Hatteras gusting to 75 knots, 85 miles an hour.
So the strongest winds are still offshore.
They are.
I see. Now there is that tornado watch in effect, and of course we do continue with tornado warnings in effect for northern Hyde County and Terrell County, as well as northern Onslow County. So certainly prepare for rapidly changing weather conditions in those areas. And we want to take a look now at the high tides that are coming up. We've gone through one high tide cycle late this morning, and now the next is coming up this evening. And you can see from Hampton Roads, Virginia, on down to Hatteras Inlet, North Carolina, the high tides are going to be roughly 11:30 on up toward
right
midnight.
after midnight, And that'll be the next high tide. And this takes on even more significance now, Dan, because we know that the hurricane is still going to be over North Carolina. So a lot of these areas here are still going to have onshore winds at the time of the next high tide, and that could be kind of critical.
Well, let's wrap it up, John, by first or by mentioning those people who are upwind or up the track of the possible storm.
Well, right now it appears that it's going to move so slowly over North Carolina that farther up they don't have to worry too much. We still believe there's going to be a gradual turn toward the northeast, and right now our thinking is that the center of the storm anyway is likely to stay southeast of the big metropolitan areas in the northeast.
Well, good news so far, but we will, of course, be monitoring hour by hour. Right?
Indeed, we will.
John Hope, hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel. And if you want the very latest on what's happening with Hurricane Bonnie, be sure to tap into our Weather Channel online service, weather.com. And now for what's happening elsewhere across the country, we go to the studio and Rich Johnson.
All right, thank you, Dan. Just a reminder that this Weather Center is sponsored by Subaru. Fortunately, much of the rest of the nation is enjoying pleasant weather today, although there are a few storms in the plains and some linger into Texas. Let me show you what's going on. Here it is, the big picture out there showing that we do have a few showers and thunderstorms at the tail end of the front through Nebraska and Kansas. We also have some rain showers up across the northeast coast. Temperatures around the nation, quite a hot day in the south again, where it's up above 100 degrees, areas of Arkansas to Oklahoma City. North of the front, though, where the rain is falling, it is holding the temperatures down just a bit, actually quite a bit, where it's about 20 degrees cooler than surrounding regions. Checking the northeast, you can see some clouds up across the northeast corridor.
Who is at Wrightsville Beach, just east of Wilmington. Bill, what are you experiencing where you are?
Okay, we continue to see the rains falling here in the Wrightsville Beach area. We had some optimism earlier today when the hurricane was still making that trek to the northbound, but it looks as though it's going to stall out this evening, and because of that, the northeast wind continues and it's pulling in all that juicy Atlantic moisture. The rains have picked up once again. Seemingly the wind is not as bad as it had been, and I can tell you at the height of the rain, this is what was incurred. This is a massive tree. We're guessing at least 50 years old, a big live oak tree. Well, we can take the live out of the oak, and unfortunately it also took out a minivan behind it. That was one of the casualties today. We have some video we shot earlier, and we'll show you some of the scenes within about a mile radius of where we are. I couldn't really go too far as it was way too dangerous, as we estimated winds as high as 90 to 95 miles per hour here on the mainland side of Wrightsville Beach. But a lot of high water, a lot of trees down, power lines down, and a lot of signs kind of whipping around the area. Things are a little better now. I do not recommend anybody going outside though, Dan. The water still pretty high, and what we're going to have to watch out for now, we thought the next high tide would be okay. Now it looks around 11:30 tonight or so. With the continued onshore flow, we will have problems on the beaches. So folks in and around New Hanover and Brunswick and Pender counties had better factor that into their evening plans. Back to you, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Bill. We'll be checking back with you through the evening, and thanks for standing by there in Wrightsville Beach. We're incidentally at Plaza East Shopping.
Cream snob. Right away I thought healthy choice.
But I was shocked. Chunks of brownies, caramel, cappuccino, chocolate chunk. Only 2 grams of fat.
With Healthy Choice, I've got a green light to eat what I like.
Yeah.
You can also get reliable forecasts from the Weather Channel through this radio station. Stay with the Weather Channel for up-to-the-minute coverage of Hurricane Bonnie. Get the potential impact and be prepared. Watch Weather Center on the hour and...
Over the next several months, you might see our service crews in your neighborhood. The work they'll be doing will improve the reliability and overall performance of your cable service and enable us to offer you advanced communications options in the near future. As this work is being done, you may experience temporary interruptions. We will do our best to keep this inconvenience to a minimum. And later this year, look for our brand new channel lineup. Thank you for choosing Comcast, everything you connect with.
Diet. I've tried everything. Then I tried Herbal PF and lost 52 pounds. It helped me control my hunger and my weight.
My patients report that Herbal PF helps control their appetite, reduce cravings, and create a feeling of fullness. Many were able to lose weight successfully.
And now you can order a 60-tablet supply of Herbal PF for only $19.95. If you call now, we'll include a $5 gift certificate for future purchases. Call 1-800-257-5700 now.
Each time a disturbance comes off the coast of Africa, we follow that until it develops into a storm or to whatever it does. That way you're prepared and you're safe, out of harm's way.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
this edition of Stormwatch, we look at our tropical update as we focus in on the very latest on Bonnie, a complete wrap-up and all the details coming up at the top of the hour. Give you an overview of what's happening as it continues to be just about on shore near Wilmington, North Carolina. 115-mile-an-hour winds, still putting it at a Category 3. Slow movement towards the north at about 8 miles an hour and a central pressure. Check that home barometer. 28.32 is pretty low on the barometer. The biggest problems will be the storm surge, rainfall, and gusty winds. That's why hurricane warnings are still posted from Cape Romaine all the way up into the North Carolina-Virginia border area. Be extra careful. All the necessary precautions should have already taken place by now, but if you need to secure anything else, still have an opportunity to. Tropical storm warnings continue up to around Cape Henlopen, and looks like that will continue to be a problem for tropical storm force winds as the evening wears on. Storm surge, that wall of water coming in, a definite factor through the nighttime hours as we approach high tide again. We'll be backing that water into Pamlico Sound and some of the sound areas, Albemarle Sound. Please be alert of some flooding going on in that area. Winds a factor as well as we continue to see hurricane force winds buffeting the coast right now. There's a satellite perspective of what's going on with Bonnie, fanning out some of the cloudiness all the way back up into West Virginia right now. And there's where most of the rain is, extending back west of Raleigh-Durham. There could be, with the slower movement, there could be the possibility of some serious flooding in eastern areas of North Carolina. We'll keep you apprised on that. And here's the latest on Danielle moving west-northwest. Looks like it may strengthen a little bit as it moves into a more favorable environment over the next couple of days. And again, it's a long way out there.
We're monitoring Hurricane Bonnie as it makes landfall along the Carolina coast. Get its potential impact and be prepared. Watch Weather Center after your local forecast.
There's something new growing in the valley. Introducing Garden Vegetable Ranch. Hearty vegetables blended with the original ranch. Only from Hidden Valley. There's a garden in every bottle.
Anne Klein Eyewear by Luxottica. What do you want people to see?
I want you to see fearlessness.
The unexpected.
I want you to see you don't need words to make it.
As Hurricane Bonnie hits North Carolina, it brings with it high winds, heavy rain, and flooding. This is Wrightsville Beach on the coast, which is just east of Wilmington. Bonnie continues to move ever so slowly along the North Carolina coast, and one of the biggest concerns at this hour is flooding rain. And good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Weather Channel. It's Weather Center, and we're focusing, of course, on Hurricane Bonnie as it makes landfall. The center estimated now to be roughly in the vicinity of Cape Fear, North Carolina. So the center of the hurricane has moved ashore. Winds, or the motion of the storm, the forward motion has decreased, and that's not good news at all in terms of the amount of rain which could well be falling across eastern portions of North Carolina. Rainfall estimates, according to the National Hurricane Center, have been bumped up to perhaps 6 to 12 inches of rain, and in some local areas there could even be more than that. Due to the heavy rains which continue, there are flood warnings in effect. A couple of the newly issued counties now under flood warnings are Beaufort County and Pitt County in North Carolina. Also, flood warnings continue in effect for Bladen County, Brunswick County, Columbus, New Hanover, Pender, and Robeson counties, with rainfall estimates of 3 to 6 inches of rain having fallen already. Here's a look at radar, and as we take a look at the spiral rain bands and the broad shield of rain actually circulating counterclockwise around the center of Hurricane Bonnie, we want to note that due to the flooding and the heavy rain and the high winds, the city of Wilmington and New Hanover County are both under a curfew from 8 p.m. this evening until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And the curfew means that it's unlawful to be out on public streets or property in New Hanover County or the city of Wilmington unless you're in search of medical assistance or services necessary to sustain a family member. In addition, as this hurricane is making landfall, it of course is doing the usual generation of tornadoes, and at this time there is a tornado warning continuing in effect for Jones County in southeastern North Carolina. Well, in the path of this battering that is being received thanks to Hurricane Bonnie, we have Bill Keneally of the Weather Channel standing by at Wrightsville Beach, just east of Wilmington. Let's find out from Bill what's happening there. Bill?
Ongoing. We're hot. Dan, we continue to find the rain falling here. It's raining pretty heavily, I might add, too. and we continue to have that northeast wind. We continue to have the heavy rain going on, Dan. And again, the northeast wind continues to come in. My suspicion is we have another high tide to deal with, and that high tide with that northeast wind will not be welcome, obviously. Thankfully, earlier today when we had one of the storm surges come through, what we thought was the only storm surge, there was a low tide, but that will not be the break we'll get tonight. Looking around me, Dan, we do continue to see the heavy rain and the high winds, but they're not near as high as they were earlier today. Now, the other concern I would have, Dan, is if we continue to keep getting this rain coupled with all this wind, I'm thinking the trees are going to probably get very prone to falling over. As you can see, this one did too, and this one's been around a while, believe me. This guy was here before Hazel, but no more. So we'll continue to watch the rain fly. If I get a chance, I'll get down to the water before dark and see how the tide's doing, as we're looking at a high tide coming in at about 11 o'clock tonight. So for now, we'll turn it back to you, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Bill. We'll be checking back with you there at Wrightsville Beach. Bill Keneally of the Weather Channel, and in just a few moments we'll be checking in with Jim Cantore, who is on up the coast a bit at Morehead City. Incidentally, at 5 o'clock in the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, the watches and warnings north of the North Carolina-Virginia border have been revised, and we're going to update you on those in just a moment. First off, we turn here in the Forecast Center to John Hope, a hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel. And John, the movement of the storm has slowed, but it is making progress, and conditions are going to continue to be very, very serious in the eastern sections of North Carolina through the night, aren't they?
On the last advisory, it had slowed to 10 miles an hour, but the bad thing is, Dan, it's expected to slow down even more. And this means the center of the storm is going to be over North Carolina for some time, 24 hours or more.
Well, let's take a look quickly, John, at the coordinates, latest coordinates as of the 5 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center.
Okay, that was a 34.0 and 78.0 west, and that was about 21 miles south of Wilmington, North Carolina, but right just about over Cape Fear.
I see. And maximum sustained winds offshore, still about 115 miles per hour.
Yes, we have not seen that much wind ashore. Now, there's a automated station down just off Cape Fear, and that has been reporting gusts now to 102 miles per hour, I believe.
Well, I understand that Jim Cantore can testify to the high winds that are buffeting the coast now. Let's join Jim where he stands, or is trying to stand, at Morehead City, North Carolina. What's the latest, Jim?
Well, Dan, first of all, we may lose you because of the rain squall that's coming through here, so don't be surprised if you see the signal either go completely or really fade away. So that's what's going on. It's the rain that's interfering with the satellite picture. Obviously, we're right in the middle of another one of these very heavy rain squalls. The last one that moved through unleashed hurricane force winds here. We've easily gusted to hurricane force, at times even higher than that. So that has been the big problem. We just lost some shingles off. I see some shingles coming off roofs right now. This is definitely the highest gust that we've had so far. No doubt about it. Just very, very heavy rain. Look at the tower cam here. You can see the trees practically bending over here. And I'll tell you, it's almost like there's sleet pounding my body. That's how it feels. The rain feels like ice. Ice pellets just hammering away. Incredibly heavy rain coming down right now, and no doubt the strongest winds thus far. And each one of these squalls that come on through continue to unleash very, very powerful winds, easily gusting to hurricane force, probably somewhere in the range of 75 to 85 miles an hour. Folks, the difference with this storm between Fran and Bertha, remember Bertha and Fran just came on shore. This thing's just taking its own sweet time and just hammering away at the coast. So some big, big problems here. Look at the surf behind me. Here we are in Bogue Sound. And I mean, the visibility is very low, so you may not be able to see much of this, but we are just obviously, I mean, you can't even see out there. I mean, the water is extremely choppy, and the good news is the wind is actually paralleling the sound here, so it is not coming up on shore. Now, if the winds were to change around from the south, that's when we're going to get hammered, and that could very well happen a little bit later on tonight. But very, very heavy rain coming down with this squall. I saw shingles coming off of some of the roofs around here. Definitely the strongest gust that we've dealt with so far. Look at the tower cam shot that we have. The rain, which you can, of course, makes it hard to see the trees, but the trees are swaying very, very much. Earlier on, Dan, I talked about the fact that we had the smell of pine and fresh cut wood in the air, and that is because of trees snapping, limbs snapping off. we of course have been without power here for the last 6 hours or so. So until these winds die down, which I just listened to John say we could have this thing onshore for 24 hours, the power crews can't get out and restore the power. So this could be a very prolonged problem here in eastern North Carolina. Back to you, Dan.
Jim, I'm amazed you can stay on your feet. We'll check back with you. Thanks very much. And we continue our discussion here in the Forecast Center with the Weather Channel's John Hope, hurricane expert. And John, let's take a look at the revised watches and warnings, which have been changed from the North Carolina-Virginia border northward.
I hope Jim Cantore seeks some shelter right away there. What's happened is that all the hurricane warnings north of the North Carolina-Virginia border have been changed to tropical storm warnings and a hurricane watch.
I see. And that's a reflection of the fact that the storm's moving so slowly, eh?
It's moving slowly and also over land, Dan. It is going to weaken. It's not going to be any abrupt weakening, but as long as that center is over land, it will weaken slowly.
Yes. And so along with the battering that's occurring and the heavy rain that's falling, we still have the storm surge to consider.
We still have the storm surge, and that is going to be crucial again at high tide tonight, especially, Dan, up to the northeast along the coast, east of where the hurricane center is.
And you mentioned high tide. We might just quickly note that in that area it's going to be roughly 11:30 until about 1 o'clock.
Yeah, close to midnight.
Right. So a time for treacherous conditions in that area.
Indeed.
John, thank you very much. We'll be checking back with you. Weather Channel's John Hope, hurricane expert. And if you want to get the very latest on Hurricane Bonnie, check in at our online service, weather.com. And now for the latest on what's happening elsewhere across the country, we go to the studio and Janetta Jones.
All right, thanks so much, Dan. Fortunately, most of the rest of the nation is enjoying pleasant weather today, although there are a few storms in the plains and some rain lingers in Texas. As we check out the radar, we can show you where the rain continues to be a little bit of a threat in Texas. We still have flash flood watches in effect. You may recall we had the Tropical Storm Charlie move onshore over the weekend, and we're still feeling the effects of the flooding from that. We've also got showers and thunder showers here in parts of Nebraska and Kansas. Now that is having an impact because we do have
the dry area toward the center of the hurricane in the eye. And you can see that the eye is there just about over Cape Fear, North Carolina, which is south of Wilmington. And the storm is moving slowly to the north, between 5 and 8 miles per hour. And unfortunately, with that slow movement, the storm is going to be continuing to batter through the night. Well, we have standing by in Morehead.
Dan, about 5 o'clock, the Hurricane Center declared that this was had made landfall near Cape Fear in North Carolina. But looking at this radar over the past few hours, we have a well-organized eye, and as you can see here very plainly, most of it is still offshore. We have the impression that it's nudged up along the coast a little bit. So we're faced with a situation here where all or most of this eye is going to be over water for a while longer, maybe quite a while, and that's going to allow the hurricane at least to maintain itself and keep up these very strong winds that have been reported.
My. Well, of course, the watches and warnings have been revised from the North Carolina. Good evening and welcome.